you all, like me, and I hear it every day, how you appreciate the reading between the lines or the truth about some particular economic topic that has been disseminated out there that is just dead wrong. And I have an opportunity to give that to you every day, and I know you appreciate that. Well, how bad do we need it in our mainstream media and in our news? We need it worse than ever. It seems like it's going to be worse this year than it was last year. Many of you know Fred Jackson. Fred Jackson is the news director of American Family News. And American Family News continues to grow, continues to expand because people want the truth. They want the news from a biblical perspective, and they want the news with the idea that it's coming based on facts and truth and not all kinds of spins and slants to it. So we have with us Fred Jackson, news director, American Family News, and we're grateful to have Fred with us. Fred, welcome. Thank you for taking some time.
Good to be with you, Dan, as always. I tell you what, we were talking a short while ago about how different it was when you and I were going to school way back when.
Yeah, way back when.
We may have a few people listening who are about that age, can remember the 60s.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. But we were talking about the fact that when we went to school, the value system promoted at our school was the same as what our mom and dad promoted at home
right.
and what we were taught in our churches.
Yes.
And even to a certain extent, what we saw on TV. Father knows best and
Leave It to Beaver.
Leave It
and
to
all
Beaver.
that stuff. Yeah.
So it was a value system. Now, people may not have called it back then a Bible-based value system,
Right.
but without knowing it,
Yeah.
that was accepted in the community. But what has happened over the last 25 or 30 years is what I call an ideological revolution out there. And what I mean by that is that whole value system has been skewed.
Mm-hmm.
And so now when kids watch TV, they're not going to recognize the biblical value system on TV. And many times in the classroom, whether it's college or high school, they're not going to recognize a biblical value system. Our court system, our politicians, and sad to say, even in some churches, have abandoned that biblical value system. And really, what American Family News and One News Now is all about is a place where you can go where those biblical values are still appreciated. We are in an ideological revolution, a culture war. That's one of the phrases that's used. And people need to be aware, need to hear that biblical perspective on the policies that are being made in Washington, in our state capitals every day, on what we're hearing on television, which is portrayed as being the norm. We need to hear about what our kids are going through at our colleges. Our Christian kids are being persecuted. We need to hear from a biblical perspective still what pro-life means.
Yeah.
And that is why when you go to One News Now, when you listen to our newscasts, you're going to hear, for instance, the pro-life issue from a biblical perspective.
Right.
We don't apologize for that. When we talk about the Roe v. Wade anniversary that's held each year, you're not going to hear from a pro-abortion perspective. Mm-hmm. You're going to hear about the battles that are raging. Here's one example. And we've talked about this from time to time. When the annual March for Life is held in Washington, the mainstream media will just kind of dismiss it and will often focus on the 30 or 40 people who show up, who are pro-abortionists.
Right.
And they get as much time as the 100,000 or more that are there who are pro-life. And people are surprised when they come and they listen to AFR News and they go to One News Now. You mean there were 100,000 people, young people, teenagers, moms and dads? Yeah, because you haven't seen it anywhere else. And today, more than ever, Christians need a news source that they can trust. And Brother Don, founder here at American Family Association, many years ago recognized that Christians could no longer depend on the mainstream media, the NBCs, the ABCs, and the CNNs, to get their news from a Christian perspective. or at least some kind of biblical, even some balance, Dan, one side or the other. But now, as I often say, and I don't mean to be overly critical, but having assessed this now over the last 20 years, for the most part, the mainstream media, they are propaganda machines for the anti-biblical crowd.
Right.
And it's not an overstatement.
No, and I don't think it's critical. I think it is just a statement of the facts. It's the way it is. And I think all the listeners and viewers wouldn't certainly understand that and get that. And what I'm finding is they're more sick of it today than they've ever been. You know, there was a drop-off of the last State of the Union speech. There was a drop-off of 15% of viewership. I mean, there's 15% of the people said, I don't need to watch this. And then the ones that did watch it, it was overwhelming that they were watching Fox News because they feel like there's a much greater chance of hearing some truth in the commentary afterwards in and around that. And, what I always find amazing when it comes to news, just because I'm a money guy and I'm a capitalist at heart, I'm always amazed that even the almighty dollar hasn't changed the way that news is reported. In other words, they're not saying, now NBC is starting to do this a little bit, very intentional. They made an announcement, but they're not saying, wait a minute, why is Fox News #1 for so stinking long? What do we got to do to get a piece of that? Yeah. Well, we got to be balanced, as you just said. We got to be balanced. We got to do. They don't care.
No,
they don't care. They have their ideology has created these blinders to any kind of common sense whatsoever, or even practical business sense, which is amazing to me. What are some of the things that our listeners and viewers can do to make sure? Because you might not be in a place at noon. One News Now or American Family News comes on at the top of every hour on any AFR station, and it's a four and a half minute. I think it's 4.5 minutes.
4.5. Yeah.
4.5 minutes of headline news, and you get to see, hear the perspectives of it. But if you can't do that, you can go where, Fred? How can you hear that on a very regular basis?
OneNewsNow.com.
OneNewsNow.com.
Okay. Again, it was a news site, Brother Don's idea back many years ago. It started off as Agape Press, but now it's OneNewsNow.com. And you can go there and you can read the stories that you hear on AFR News. We have a team of reporters that are doing stories that the Associated Press and NBC and CNN are not doing. As I mentioned a moment ago, ProLife Stories. But you'll hear stories on national security issues that you won't hear anywhere else. You will hear business stories. We even interview a guy by the name of Dan Seeley every now and then
I've heard
for
of
business stories. You heard about him? But you just go there. We do the legal stories, the stories about business people who are being persecuted because they're Christians. You'll find the latest stories on that there. So it's a great place for Christians to go to get educated about the issues going on in this revolution that we're talking about going on in our country right now.
And they're the stories we need to hear. We've got to hear some of those stories. And so much of what I hear on One News Now or see on OneNewsNow.com, you're not seeing anywhere else.
Oh, no.
I mean,
well, that's why we have this team report. Like I say, pro-life, you're going to hear very stories that you don't get anywhere else. Stories about the media. Yeah. What are good Christian movies that you could go out and view? We'll do reviews of those kinds of things. It's a full persecution of Christians going on around the world. There's a lot of attention, and rightly so, being paid to the terrorism right now. But part of that story is what the terrorists are doing to Christians around the world. Places in Central Africa that you've heard about, places like Nigeria, Uganda. We will give you the latest information on that. Here's a neat thing. We have a brand new app for OneNewsNow.com.
Okay, so you can get it on your phone.
Yep. Go to OneNewsNow.com. Go up to the right-hand corner on the toolbar.
Okay.
You click on that, and you will see in front of you what they call, I'm not a techie guy,
right.
but they call a QR code. Okay. It looks kind of like you see on products that you buy at the store, etc. Okay. So what you do is you take your phone and you line it up with that QR code. And now we've just developed some new technology, or
Oh, it's a barcode thing.
it's
Where
a
you have to,
kind of like a barcode thing.
Okay.
And so, and there's one QR code, and it will detect what kind of cell phone you have, whether it's Apple or Android. Well, all of those.
right.
Again, I'm not a techie guy, but you just that one QR code now, and it will detect what kind of phone you have, and just follow the instructions. And you can put that app on your cell phone. So no matter where you are, you're traveling through the airport, you're on the go in your car. Whatever the case may be, you can click on that app and you can get the very latest news.
So does the app allow you to hear it or just read like onenewsnow.com? Okay, gotcha.
Read those stories.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's terrific. And we just got a report recently. Since we introduced the app, thousands of people have signed up. And there's a way that we have to measure how successful the app is. And the top score, I think, is a 5. And we are consistently getting 4.5 and 5 numbers, which I am told are absolutely incredible numbers.
Great.
Yeah.
One News Now, all one word, onenewsnow.com to get that app. I don't have that app. I've had to do that. onenewsnow.com. And I tell people that onenewsnow.com is something that you check through all through the day.
Mm-hmm.
You don't make it a favorite on your computer, even your computer at work. So if you're on a break, you're in lunch hour, you can check that app on a regular basis. One of the things that is, and we're about out of time here, but one of the things that the news, as you've already alluded to this, is being reported in a totally unafraid way.
Mm-hmm.
We're not concerned about being politically correct.
No.
Which is right up my alley. So, there's no issue there. There's nothing, it's the truth from a significant reporters, staff, a significant staff that are biblically minded and have that biblical worldview, that are looking at what we know our brothers and sisters in Christ need to hear and want to hear the side of a particular story.
Oh, absolutely. And now more than ever, Dan, I think more and more Christians realize they need to be educated about the issues from a Christian perspective.
Amen. Fred Jackson, director of American Family News. Fred, we sure appreciate what you're doing for the kingdom. Folks, onenewsnow.com. Make sure you check it out. onenewsnow.com. Get the app on your phone. Go to it throughout the day so that you can be in tune from a biblical worldview on what's going on in the news.